This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Welcome back to Short Shifts. I'm your host, Ben Burnett. Joining me, your other host, Louis Ezekiel. Louis, how are you tonight, my friend?
Oh, doing great. Soft snowflakes falling down here still. Things are very wintry here in Michigan. How about yourself?
Yeah, we had we had freezing rain for 8 hours the other night. So the roads are disgusting. The sidewalks are horrible. But, you know, we've had as far as maritime winters go, it's been pretty chill. I shouldn't say anything because I'm definitely going to jinx it, but I can't complain this year. My first year back in New Brunswick.
Sounds like a good night to sit inside and talk about fantasy hockey.
Yeah, and let's get right into it. Actually, before we even start here, Louis, I'm looking at the game scores. This is Thursday night, of course, the show coming out Friday morning, but Joe Thornton with another multi-point game here. He now has 6 points since coming back to the Toronto lineup. We talked about him the other night, but I just wanted to point out, this is something that our pal Edward in the Keeping Karlsson patron-only Discord groups pointed out. Joe Thornton has 8 points in 4 games against Ottawa, 0 points in his other 3 games. Oh, in 8 points in 5 games, rather, against Ottawa. I mean, he will see Ottawa at least 5 more times this year, right? So maybe it is still worth adding him to your lineup.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, we have such a small sample size against other opponents, which is just kind of a bizarre result of the way that the schedule has worked so far. I don't think we're ready to declare Joe Thornton useless against non-Ottawa opponents, but it's always nice to have Ottawa on your schedule. And certainly for the Maple Leafs, who are just, you know, making well, I don't want to get ahead of my skis here because we know how it turned out last time, but I imagine at least offensively they are really having their way with the Sens.
Louis, let's jump right into headlines here. And our first headline, Philadelphia Flyers are back in action following, I guess, about 2 weeks off due to COVID-19. They are a short-handed squad tonight, missing our Claude Giroux and Jakub Voracek. I believe it's the first game in about 10 years where neither of them dressed for Philadelphia. In their stead, a top line of JVR, Couturier, and Joel Farabee. Every other line looking pretty meh tonight. You've got Kevin Hayes and Nolan Patrick down the middle, which is respectable, but their wingers tonight, Raffl, Aube-Kubel, Bunnaman, and Andre's brother, David Kasha. So, I guess Alain Vigneault has already said Giroux, Konechny, and Voracek, all the players that are currently or still on the COVID-19 list, will be out through the weekend, which includes the big Lake Tahoe game coming up this Sunday. Any thoughts on any of those guys, Louis?
You know, I think it'll mean probably big minutes for that top line with JVR and Couturier and Farabee. No one else I'm especially excited with, although, of course, the goal so far has come from the Hayes, Raffl, Aube-Kubel line. So, you know, maybe if they're deploying their best defenders against that top line, it'll result in a few more opportunities down the line. But no, nothing super exciting. I think this is, you know, not much to say with 2 periods gone only to really base our conjecture off of, but certainly something to watch. And who are they playing anyway?
The Rangers, my lovely, terrible Rangers.
Okay. So, you know, that might be a good opportunity for the Rangers, although both sides have played a pretty tight game so far, or you might say an offensively anemic game so far, 1-1 after 2 periods.
You're being very kind. I mean, if we're grading on a curve here, I would say the Rangers have been bad enough that you would expect the Flyers to be able to make some hay, and the Flyers are shorthanded enough that you would think the Rangers would be able to do same. So it makes sense to me. It's about 1-1. One guy I will mention, though, Erik Gustafsson on that top unit. I mean, Philadelphia's power play has been pretty brutal for the last, even before they went on their break, but somebody to look out for if you're in a deeper league and desperate for some power play points on the back end. Lewis, let's hop over to the injuries and outjuries section of the show. We're going to start first in Washington, where Ilya Samsonov appears to be coming back up to join the big club after a few games down with their AHL affiliate. Samsonov has been out since mid-January on the COVID-19 protocol. He and Kuznetsov had two of the most harrowing interviews talking about COVID-19 and their experiences going through symptoms of the virus. In the meantime, while he was out, Vitek Vanacek started 12 straight games, is in the nets once again tonight. He has struggled of late, a .906 on the season, and Laviolette has not yet committed to playing Samsonov this weekend. They do have a Saturday-Sunday back-to-back. Are you bullish enough on Samsonov to say cut ties on Vanacek? I have him in the cupful. Should I be dropping him with the news that Samsonov is coming back, or where's your head on this tandem?
Well, it seems pretty clear that Vanacek's going to get at least another game, so I wouldn't be looking at dropping him until we get through the weekend here. Samsonov has not played, obviously, you mentioned he's been out since mid-January. The season started in mid-January, so he has been out for quite a long time. We don't have a great sense of what Samsonov might be able to put together once he's back. We've seen some of these teams missing a bit of a step after their return from COVID. So, no, I think I would hold on to Vanacek if he's valuable to you now at his .906 rate currently. I think he will remain valuable for you for at least a little while. I think it is going to take Samsonov a little bit of time to get back into the game. That's not based off of anything medical, but just, if I were going to, place a bet on this, I would say that we'll continue to see Vanacek get some run while Samsonov gets his feet under himself. Obviously, that AHL stint should be a good first step. But like you said, if Laviolette won't commit to playing him this weekend yet, I think he'll probably get one of those games. Why not? If he's already being recalled and he's not just getting a bunch of run down on the smaller team, but. I would hold on to Vanacek for a while yet and just sort of see how things go in the early goings with Samsonov's return.
So I have Vanacek in the cupful, as I mentioned, which is a points league. So you're not as dependent on those rate stats in the cupful, but in a categories league, he's been pretty brutal. I think that it's pretty safe to cut bait on him in a lot of categories leagues. I may hang on to him in the cupful just for a weekend start, but as soon as it looks like Samsonov is back in any real capacity, he is straight to the waiver wire, I must say. Lewis, let's jump over to Minnesota, where an old friend of mine from Manhattan is back. Well, he's from Norway. I know him from Manhattan. Matt Zuccarello rejoining the Wild tonight. They have not started their game, but he is on line one with Joel Eriksson Ek and Kevin Fiala. Something to watch as we get closer to as we get through the week here. Also, a New York Ranger injury. Jacob Trouba out 4+ weeks. I think that might be interesting if you're a K'Andre Miller owner, though Miller is injured tonight. This might open up a spot on power play too, so might be a nice chance for K'Andre to get some run. And the last injury I want to mention here, Jaden Schwartz and Colton Parayko out for St. Louis. So far, they're just day-to-day, but something to monitor if you have any of those guys on your roster.
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting to see. Schwartz has kind of been the ride-along on that line with Braden Shen and Jordan Kyrou, and now they've had Mike Hoffman playing on that line at even strength. I think that's a great opportunity for Shen and Kyrou to get a bit of a line mate upgrade. Schwartz hasn't been super impressive or interesting so far yet this fantasy season, so I kind of like them together with Hoffman. I'm a Shen owner, so I wouldn't mind seeing that stick. You covered everything I would have said about Trouba being out for a while with kind of that opportunity opening for K'Andre. And as far as Matt Zuccarello goes, excited certainly to have him back and in action, but I would not be moving to do anything on him quite yet. Minnesota has been in a bit of a line blender since making their return. So, cool to see him there. Wish him all the best, but not very interesting to me fantasy-wise.
the Lizard. Right? Isn't that what Paul Fenton said about him?
Oh my gosh, yes. I was like, where is this coming from?
Well, I was going to say the Hobbit because that's his nickname among fans of his, but I'm pretty sure Paul Fenton, he's the Lizard. But anyway, Lewis, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about hot streaks. We'll talk about cold streaks. You're listening to Short Shifts.
The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything. Which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed. Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Short Shifts. Lewis, we're going to talk about hot streaks, but first, you mentioned you want to start with the cold streaks tonight.
Yeah, let's get the cold streaks out of the way so we can get on to the more exciting stuff here. We're going to start in Columbus, where Younes Korpisalo, who had 5 wins in his first 12 games, but has only managed 1 quality start in the last 7. He is down at an .887 save percent, 3.5 goals against average. And Elvis Merzlikins, who, I think a lot of us thought would have gotten a bit of a run maybe sooner, is starting the game here tonight. He hasn't been a ton better. Merzlikins only with 2 wins, but he has been significantly better, although not great in the save percentage department at a .906. He's got a 43% quality starts percentage, which is only a hair better than what we've seen from Korpisalo. It's really only the save percent that's been significantly higher. It's just kind of been a tough season to be a goalie in Columbus, which isn't something that we've said in a while. Is worth noting so far. That Merzlikins has so far through 2 periods posted a shutout against the hapless Nashville Predators, although obviously that is pending change here, in the next 45 minutes or so. But it does look like could possibly be an opportunity for Merzlikins to assert himself as a starter. Might be something to take a look at on your waiver wire if you are hard up for goalies. But like we said, he hasn't been super impressive so far this season. Merzlikins is owned in 60% of Yahoo leagues, so he's probably not lying around for you to come in and scoop him up. But, take a look there. And if you have been patiently sitting on him, maybe now is your chance to see him get a few starts in a row. But I imagine it'll continue to go back and forth. You got someone for us in Winnipeg, Ben, to talk about on a cold streak.
Yeah, well, I think there was a time period where Andrew Kopp was looked at as like the guy who, if you missed out on him, you've missed out on the underrated, the sleeper of the year. People were kind of talking about him, and I heard this on a number of podcasts, actually. We've definitely said it. He has a chance to be the Brian Rust of this year, where a guy who was known as a bottom sixer or somebody who could play up the lineup if needed, suddenly gets an extra 4 or 5 minutes a game and becomes if not a point per game guy, somebody who could put up 65 or more points. But over the last few games, things have really started to trend downward. He's currently on a 4-game pointless streak, though the Jets do play once again, or I guess they don't play tonight. They play tomorrow night. But Andrew Kopp was somebody who I've started to see being dropped, and he's among the highest dropped players in Yahoo today. But when I looked deeper, I kind of don't see what we're seeing is that he was added in too many leagues. He didn't need to be added in 10-team leagues, shallower leagues. But 12-team, 14-team leagues, I think you probably, not every team needs to hold on to Andrew Kopp, but there are a number of teams that could probably upgrade by having Andrew Kopp. The reason I say that, he's still playing with Scheifele and Wheeler, and he's on that second power play with Ehlers. In the last game, he played 24 minutes. And he's averaging nearly 20 minutes per game. Those are not numbers that you're going to find just hanging around most waiver wires. So to me, Andrew Kopp, somebody who you can probably stream out and not worry about him getting sniped while he's on a cold streak if you're in a 10 or 12 team league. But I haven't lost faith completely in Andrew Kopp.
Yeah, that ice time, obviously, and that even strength deployment is pretty tantalizing. And you did mention that second power play, which has been, functioning pretty well and has some very nice pieces on it. The 4-game pointless streak kind of looks bad compared to the run that he was on, but really I think it's just kind of a course correction that shouldn't be too surprising based on what we've seen from him up to this point. He was going to have some games where he wasn't going to be, multi-pointing for you the way that he had been. And there is a little bit, more of that ice time available up there in the top 6 with Line A out, and, he's shown himself to be capable of holding on to it. I think I'm with you. There's some room to maneuver with him if you are in, a shallower league where you might not have to worry about him being grabbed. But yeah, stay the course if you are holding on to him in a deeper league.
Yeah, I guess the question would be whether Pierre-Luc Dubois coming back from injury will displace him from that top line, but I guess we'll see, and keep your eye on that. If he starts losing minutes, then that's when I would panic. Not quite yet. Lewis, who's the next player you have to chat with us about?
All right, so we can get to a hot streak here and talk about Max Comtois. This was a guy who was brought up by Mason in the Discord chat and wanted to hear about him, and I basically am taking my answer that I gave to him and bringing it onto the show here. Obviously, pending results tonight, but he's been on quite a heater. 4 goals on his last 10 shots are making him look really good. And he's had 2 shots a game over his more productive last 5, which is a nice improvement. A bit of an improvement from his 18 shots over his first 11 games, but not as much of an uptick as I thought it might be with his increased minutes. During this last 5 games where he's been on his run, he hasn't played under 15 minutes. And it's nice that his line with Rickard Rakell and this guy Isaac Lundestrom is driving play. But overall, not really a guy that I'd be willing to do more than stream for right now. This may be some Anaheim bias creeping through, but I think until Rakell figures out his shooting woes, I just don't think that Max Comtois is going to be able to keep carrying offense on this line, and especially on that second power play, which is a bit of a ghost town.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want the guy on the second power play in Anaheim. That it actually made me sad to think about. Like, we've seen a few, and actually this is my favorite thing. If you follow us on Twitter, please send us like the struggle screenshots of people trying to get in on like Anaheim's second power play, or, we had a lot of people sending us when the backup in Detroit went in. Calvin Pickard, Elon's favorite goaltender. When Pickard went into a game, we were looking for screenshots of Calvin Pickard. I love seeing people going after the struggle players. So I think Max Comtois is clearly above that grade. I actually kind of like him in deeper banger leagues. He's owned in a few of the leagues that I'm in, and I don't see him as an obvious drop, especially while he's on the heater. But definitely, you're waiting on Rakell to start scoring. I get that, but I think he will start to figure it out, and I think that Comtois is going to be useful I think he's going to be useful in deeper and banger leagues this year.
Right on. All right. So tell us about another guy who's on a hot streak here in Long Island.
Sure. This is a player we were going to talk about the other night and ended up running out of time. And then he went on to score another goal and got another assist that night. Jean-Gabriel Pageau, a player who was always a bottom 6 kind of afterthought in fantasy until last year when he went on a shooting heater for the Sens. And Pageau has now scored 5 goals in his last 4 games played. He does not have a point tonight, I guess. So I should say 5 goals in his last 5 games, unless he scores here in the third. He also has an assist to add to that. In that time period, also 15 shots over that 4-game span. He is getting line 3 power play 2 time, but just like Comtois, that's not very exciting sounding. Oh, he's on power play 2 with the Islanders, but he never really got power play time until last year in Ottawa, and he's shown that he can be this 50-plus point guy, like 55 with the heater, right? Like shooting 20% or whatever it was last year. I don't think that that's the guy that he's going to be. He's not going to score 5 goals on every 15 shots, that's for sure. But I think in bangers leagues, he's getting you hits. He's shooting a ton. He's playing on a good team, and he's such a defensive player. He's going to be in on a couple of empty net goals. I don't have a problem with Jean-Gabriel Pageau in a lot of leagues. I just wouldn't go streaming him in if I'm, looking for points and there's anyone who's like line 1, power play 1 to choose from instead.
Right. He's obviously making the most of his very limited opportunities, but if you can get someone who is just going to naturally be in a much better deployment position, I think that the odds are going to be more in your favor than hoping for Pageau to continue to totally defy his odds in terms of, what is naturally available to him.
100%, bud.
All right, well, let's talk about a defenseman that we were high on in the offseason and has kind of been a little disappointing, I think, for his owners, but is on a nice streak now, and that's Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg. After only getting 2 points in 9 games, Morrissey has been on a bit of a hot run here with 5 assists in the last 4. He hasn't really seen much of a change in terms of his deployment. He's pretty much been solidified on that top power play since Laine was out. And obviously since he was dealt. But his team is just converting for him a little more frequently. Despite the recent run, he's still got the lowest on-ice shooting percentage of his career. So that may indicate that the new rate is a little bit of a regression to the mean. One thing that does have me a bit worried is that he's got a career high in his secondary assist percentage. So 2/3 of his points are coming on secondary assists, and we know that those tend to be a little more random. So that is a little bit concerning. Another area that I thought was really interesting, and I don't know how fantasy relevant this is necessarily for our season, but he had a 92% power play IPP last year. So just everything was moving through him on the power play. It may not be so shocking that his power play production has fallen a bit here in 2021, just because it was going to be really hard to match his achievement from last year. Still, there may be some room to grow in terms of getting to participate a bit more in some of that power play scoring.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense, though, for him to have been in, obviously not 92% of the goals, but on Power Play 2 in Winnipeg, it makes sense that he would get more touches than he would on Power Play 1 this year. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, you're talking about the secondary assist rate, though. It's only 67. I mean, it's not... He's been at 64 and 63 before, so that doesn't really scare me too much. It's really just that he has gone long stretches without really factoring in strongly on the power play that I do not like. He just doesn't seem to be somebody who's going to get a ton of touches or a ton of power play points. So he's somebody who, if I have him and I can shop him in a deeper league, I would be happy to move him for maybe somebody who can fill a few back end categories instead, or a more reliable point producer, because to me, he kind of just looks like Nick Leddy all those years in Long Island as the power play 1 guy a few years back.
So funny you should mention Long Island, because I sort of think of Morrissey, this little streak that he's on, being very similar to what we saw with Pulock, where we have a couple kind of 40-ish point defenders who, just happen to have their run of games without scoring kind of all in a row, and now are getting their games where they're scoring together all in a row. Kind of just standard defenseman stuff, like we said with Pulock previously. But nice to see him get off the schneid a little bit and start to be productive, because you do start to worry a little bit when you're on those long stretches and they're just not really seeming to break through.
Absolutely. Lewis, that's all the time we have for tonight. For myself, Ben Burnett, thank you so much for listening. Why don't you sign us out of here, buddy?
All right, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. Please give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, at ShortShiftsKK. Brian and Elon, of course, are at Keeping Karlsson. You can follow Dave Bettner's Stream Scheme at NHL Stream Scheme. Please visit all the great sites we use to research our episodes: Yahoo, Frozen Tools, Roto World, Natural Stat Trick, and Cacupful.com. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.